We continue to bumble along, seemingly unable to develop a reliable test to use in large quantities throughout the country to fight this awful disease. It isn't because we don't have access to the needed resources. In the written post, you'll find links to 2 reports of testing options that have been available for months. In contrast to our stumbling, Germany has the lowest death rate from coronavirus anywhere, and it's hard to understand why we don't use what has been proven to be the best available testing technology and practices. Here's an excerpt from a report by the New York Times on how Germany is achieving relative success. There's a link to the article in the written post. Quote, in mid-January, long before most Germans had given the virus much thought, Charité Hospital in Berlin had already developed a test and posted the formula online. By the time Germany recorded its first case of COVID-19 in February, laboratories across the country had built up a stockpile of test kits. Quote, the reason why we in Germany have so few deaths at the moment compared to the number of infected can be largely explained by the fact that we are doing an extremely large number of lab diagnoses, close quote, said Dr. Christian Drosten, chief virologist at Charité, whose team developed the first test. By now, Germany is conducting around 350,000 coronavirus tests a week, far more than any other European country. Early and widespread testing has allowed the authorities to slow the spread of the pandemic by isolating known cases while they are infectious. It has also enabled life-saving treatment to be administered in a more timely way. That's the end of the excerpt. To test in the U.S. at a rate comparable to that of Germany, we would have to do a minimum of 1.4 million tests every week. But we don't have a sufficient supply of test kits even for as little as 10 days. Then we're out of kits. Further, the reliability of our tests has been suspect, although claims are being made that some are now reliable. Nevertheless, our ineptitude exists and continues in spite of 3 facts. 1, the World Health Organization had test kits available for our use months ago, but for unexplained reasons our government refused to use them and relied instead on a CDC test that proved to be faulty. 2, the formula for the reliable test that Germany is using was posted online in January and was available for everyone to use, as were other kits, but we refused to use those too. 3, President Nero invoked the Defense Production Act and could have forced many manufacturers and labs to ramp up to produce as many millions of tests as we need, but he hasn't done that. On May 5, Trump made things worse by having Vice President Pence announce that he is disbanding the coronavirus task force by the end of the month. He essentially said that he is giving up without firing a shot. We would be left to suffer and many to die due to a complete lack of coherent leadership. One day later, and in typical Trump flip-flopping fashion, he reversed that. He had been stung by the very negative Republican response to his disbanding decision, so he announced that now the task force will continue. But we're left exactly the same as before, wondering if Trump and his team of incompetents will ever actually do something to help the people. Here's why they haven't and why they won't. If Trump were to take clear, decisive action like organizing massive national testing, he would be putting a stake in the ground, making himself accountable for results. If the results don't turn out to be good, and it's obvious that outcomes from this coronavirus are dreadful and will only become worse, Trump's culpability would be on display for all to see. But Trump never accepts responsibility for anything unless he can claim victory. So once again, he set things up for him to skate, and he's doing nothing. You can depend upon Trump to continue to do nothing to fight this killer disease. You can depend upon him to continue to blame others when things go wrong. You can depend upon him to care nothing about the suffering and dying that is all around. You can depend upon him to focus solely on what's good for Trump. Turns out there's a multiple whammy in that. The lack of robust testing protocol is why we don't have accurate, targeted quarantines to prevent spread of the disease. Lacking that testing information is why we're all quarantined and why the disease continues to spread and why millions are out of work and out of money. And that financial nightmare for millions of Americans is why we are in a financial depression from which it will take years to recover. and that financial depression is why we will be at far greater risk from international bad actors for a long time. In other words, our human carnage catastrophe, our economic peril, and our future foreign vulnerabilities are largely self-inflicted injuries that are due to the cowardice, ineptitude, and total self-focus of Donald Trump. And that is why we don't do widespread testing to control coronavirus and protect the people. I'm Jack Altshuler.